I remember exactly how it started, not with a suspicion, not with a gut feeling, but with a smell. A cheap, biting cologne that didn't belong anywhere near my house. I had just gotten back from a 2-day business trip, still in the same wrinkled shirt, my suitcase dragging behind me across the wooden floor. It was late, almost 2 a.m., and everything inside the house was too quiet. The lights were on in the living room, the television still humming low with some documentary neither of us ever watched. And then that smell hit me. A man's cologne, thick and heavy in the air, sharp enough to cut through the lingering scent of vanilla candles my wife always kept burning. I stood there for a second, suitcase abandoned at my feet, just breathing it in, trying to make sense of the chaos that was about to unfold. The kind of chaos you can feel vibrating under your skin before your brain even catches up. She was upstairs. I heard the water running. I moved without thinking, almost like I was pulled by strings. My feet felt heavy, every step up the stairs an effort against the weight gathering in my chest. The bathroom door was ajar, steam curling out into the hallway. She was humming a soft, lilting tune she used to sing when she was excited about something. Excited. The word burned. I pushed the door open fully, and there she was, wiping off her makeup in front of the mirror. She wore one of my shirts, the blue one she always borrowed because it was soft. It hung off her shoulders like a flag of surrender. But it wasn't for me this time. It was never going to be for me again. She saw me in the mirror and jumped, then smiled, a bright, fake smile that crumpled at the edges when she realized I wasn't smiling back. "You're home early," she said, voice high, a little too cheerful. I didn't answer. My eyes slid over the counter, 2 wine glasses, lipstick smudged, one of them with a lip imprint I didn't recognize as hers. A crumpled tie tossed carelessly into the sink, not mine. It was black with small silver dots. Stylish. Expensive looking. My silence stretched, heavy and crackling. She set down the towel, her hands fumbling just slightly. Not enough that anyone else would notice. But I saw it. I saw everything now. "Had a little wine," she said casually, turning around to face me. Her voice was coated in sugar, but her eyes were calculating. "Megan stopped by. You remember Megan, right? Megan. The imaginary best friend that always seemed to exist when she needed a ghost witness." I let the lie sit there between us for a heartbeat longer, watching her work up the courage to build the next layer. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms, feeling the cool would bite into my back. I wanted to rip the whole door off its hinges. "Megan must wear men's cologne now," I said finally, my voice colder than the night air outside. Her smile faltered just for a second, a twitch of the mouth she couldn't stop. She recovered fast. "You're being crazy," she laughed, reaching out to touch my arm, like that would reset me, like she still had the magic touch to erase doubt. "It's probably something from the office. You know how the guys hug you when they're drunk." It was a lie so fragile I could hear it splintering in the air. I stepped back from her hand like it burned. She flinched, but not with guilt, with annoyance. Like my reaction was the real crime here. "You smell like him," I said quietly, not recognizing my own voice. Her mouth opened, ready for another lie, but I was already turning, moving back down the stairs. I needed air. I needed to get out before I did something we'd both regret. She called after me once, sharply, like a mother scolding a child who dared to misbehave. I reached the front door and stopped. Something caught my eye through the sidelight windows, movement across the street. I squinted and saw a figure duck behind a parked car. I knew instantly. It was him. The bastard hadn't even left properly. He was lurking there like a coward, probably watching to see if the coast was clear, or maybe just savoring the wreckage he helped create. Without thinking, I yanked the door open and walked out into the night. The air slapped my face, cold and sharp. I didn't bother to shout. I walked straight across the lawn, feeling the wet grass soaking through my socks. He stood up as I approached, a young guy, maybe early 30s, confident in that pathetic way that comes from stealing things you didn't earn. He opened his mouth to speak, probably to throw some smug apology or excuse, but I didn't let him. I stopped 3 feet away from him and just stared. Let him feel it. Let him sit in the fire he helped start. He broke first, muttering something about it not being what I thought. "Go home," I said, low and firm. He hesitated like he was about to be brave. But he wasn't. He turned and walked fast down the street, not daring to look back. I stood there under the streetlight, breathing in the cold night, trying to stitch the shredded pieces of myself back together. Behind me, she stood in the doorway, arms folded, her face lit by the ugly yellow porch light. No apology. No guilt. Just that same tight, angry glare, like I was the one ruining her night. It hit me then with perfect clarity. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't scared. She wasn't even embarrassed. She was just mad that she got caught. And somewhere deep inside, a switch flipped. Something inside me, something important, broke clean in half. I walked back toward the house, slow and steady, like something heavy was tied to my ankles. She didn't move from the doorway. She stood there glaring, the robe of my shirt slipping off one shoulder, revealing a bare strip of skin she knew used to drive me crazy. Maybe she thought showing some skin would weaken me, confuse me, drag me back into pretending. It didn't. Not tonight. When I reached the porch, I stopped just outside the circle of light. She crossed her arms tighter, an act of defiance, not modesty. Are you seriously going to make a big deal about this? She snapped before I could open my mouth. Her voice cracked at the edges, not with regret, but with pure annoyance. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Way out of proportion. I laughed. Actually laughed. A sound too sharp, too broken to sound normal. Her eyes narrowed like she didn't like the way I laughed. Like I was disrespecting her. Who is he? I asked, keeping my voice calm, level, a whisper against the storm gathering in my chest. Nobody, she shot back instantly. Too fast. Too clean. Just someone from work. It's not serious. Not serious. I repeated it in my head like a prayer to keep from exploding. You brought him here, I said. Into our house? Into our bed. For a second, for just a flicker of a second, something flickered in her face, a flicker of guilt? No. Disgust. Like I was embarrassing her by pointing it out. Grow up, she said with a roll of her eyes. You're acting like some wounded teenager. It was just fun. You're the one who's been distant lately. You practically pushed me into it. There it was. The twist of the knife. It wasn't just that she cheated, it was that it was somehow my fault. I stepped closer, close enough to see the fake shimmer of tears she hadn't bothered to actually cry. She backed up half a step before catching herself. You think I'm going to stand here and take that? I said, low, deadly calm. I don't care what you do, she hissed. You can leave, you can stay, you can sleep on the damn lawn for all I care. But you're not going to stand here and judge me after everything I put up with. Everything she put up with. Like being married to me was a burden she bore heroically. I could feel something tightening inside me, like a noose pulling tighter with every word she spat. I glanced at the living room, the wine glasses still there, the crushed tie still gleaming under the light. I crossed the room fast, grabbed the tie off the floor. She watched me, wary now, sensing the shift she couldn't control. I held the tie up between us. Was it fun? I asked. Was it worth it? She tilted her head, smiled a small, wicked smile. More fun than I've had with you in months. The punch of that hit harder than any fist ever could. I dropped the tie at her feet. Let it stay there. Let her see it every time she crossed the damn room. She waited for me to scream, to cry, to beg, anything to give her more power. I didn't. I turned, walked to the closet, and pulled out the old duffel bag I hadn't used since college. She watched me, arms still crossed, a smirk creeping up one side of her mouth. Running away? She mocked. Real mature. I said nothing. Just packed. Jeans, shirts, socks. I didn't care what I took. None of it mattered anymore. She stood there in the doorway, her mouth running like a broken faucet, taunts, insults, petty little jabs meant to tear at me. I let it all roll off. Until she said it. You're not man enough to stay and fight for this marriage, she said, her voice rising now, fueled by the sick high of trying to win. I stopped cold. Turned slowly to look at her. There is nothing left to fight for, I said. You torched it. You lit the match and laughed while it burned. For the first time, a crack formed in her armor. Not guilt. Not sadness. Fear. Fear that I meant it. And I did. I zipped the duffel bag closed and slung it over my shoulder. Walked past her without a word. She called after me once, voice sharp and desperate, not for love, but for control. I didn't turn back. Not once. I walked out into the night again, this time without a single plan, without a destination. The door slammed behind me like a gunshot. The cold hit my face, hard and real. For the first time in a long time, I welcomed it. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I ended up in my car, parked 2 blocks down, engine off, windows cracked just enough to let in the brutal cold that kept me awake. I sat there in the dark, staring out at nothing, hands gripping the steering wheel without realizing it. My mind was a maze with no exit, replaying everything, analyzing every detail I'd missed, every smile she faked, every late night she brushed off with some clever lie. Around 5 a.m., I finally moved. The sky was a dull bruise of gray when I drove aimlessly through empty streets. My phone buzzed twice, her name lighting up the screen, and I threw it into the passenger seat without answering. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't want to hear her fake apologies, or worse, her smug defenses. I stopped at a diner just opening for breakfast, sat in the farthest booth by the window, and ordered black coffee from a waitress who barely looked at me. I must have looked like hell. Good. It matched how I felt inside. I stared at my reflection in the window, half obscured by the steam from my cup, and wondered how long I'd been living with a stranger. Wondered how many nights she laughed behind my back, how many times I rolled over in bed reaching for a woman who wasn't even mine anymore. The more I thought about it, the clearer everything became. It was like someone wiped the fog off a dirty mirror. All the little fights we had, the weird silences at dinner, the sudden bitterness in her voice over nothing, it wasn't stress, it wasn't work. It was contempt. Quiet, growing contempt that she stopped bothering to hide because she thought I was too stupid to notice. The worst part? She was right. I hadn't noticed. I had been so busy trusting her that I ignored the slow erosion happening right in front of me. Around 7:30 a.m., the diner started filling up. People in suits, construction workers, tired mothers with wild-haired kids. I sat there long after my coffee went cold, pretending not to notice the glances from the staff. Eventually, I knew I couldn't hide there forever. I picked up my phone with 2 fingers like it was something disgusting and opened the unread texts. The first one was short. "Come back. We need to talk." The second was worse. "You're seriously just going to run away like a coward? After everything? No apology. No regret. Just anger." Still trying to pull the strings. I put the phone face down on the table. I was about to leave when another number buzzed through. A number I didn't recognize. My gut tightened as I opened it. "You don't know the whole story. Meet me. Please." No name. Just an address not far from the house. At first, I thought it was her, trying to lure me back in under a different number. It would be exactly her style, games layered on games. But something about the message felt different. Off. Urgent, but not manipulative. Maybe it was the pure chaos of the last 12 hours, or maybe it was the part of me that still needed answers, needed to understand how deep the rot really went, but I found myself driving there 10 minutes later, duffel bag still in the back seat. Heart pounding against my ribs. It was a small, nondescript apartment complex, the kind you drive past 100 times without noticing. Peeling paint, old bikes chained to metal railings, windows covered in cheap blinds. I knocked once. The door swung open almost immediately. It wasn't her. It was a woman. Late 20s maybe. Dark hair pulled into a messy knot, hoodie and jeans, no makeup. She looked like she hadn't slept either. She didn't invite me in. Just stared at me with wide, exhausted eyes. "You're him," she said. Not a question. A fact. I nodded slowly. "Who are you?" "I'm Rachel," she said, and her voice cracked in a way that made my stomach clench. "And you know my wife," I said, already feeling the ground shift under my feet. She nodded once, sharp and fast, like it hurt. "I'm the girlfriend," she said. The words hit like a sucker punch. I stumbled back a step, needing to lean against the doorframe to stay upright. Girlfriend. Not another fling. A relationship. A whole secret life. Rachel was still talking, her words tumbling out like she'd been holding them back too long. She wasn't the only one. There were others. Men. Women. Half a year, maybe more. Always sneaking. Always lying. Always making promises she never kept. I listened in silence, each new detail slashing another line through the person I thought I knew. Rachel pulled out a crumpled envelope from a drawer and handed it to me without ceremony. Photos. My wife and a man at some bar, kissing like they were drowning and each other's mouths were the only air. My wife and Rachel sitting too close at a beach, hands tangled under a blanket, both grinning like they'd just gotten away with murder. A third photo, one that stopped my heart completely. My wife, holding a key in her hand, standing in front of a second apartment building I'd never seen before. A second place. A secret place. A whole other life outside the one she pretended to live with me. Rachel wiped at her nose roughly with her sleeve, looking more furious than heartbroken. "She told me she loved me," Rachel said bitterly. "Said she was leaving you. She said a lot of things." The room spun. I gripped the wall harder. "I thought you should know," Rachel added. "Before she burns you down completely." I didn't remember walking out. One minute I was standing there staring at the photos, the next minute I was outside again, the morning sun glaring too bright, burning the truth into my eyes. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. And somewhere in my chest, where love used to live, something new started to grow. Something colder. Harder. Something that wanted justice. I didn't drive straight home. I couldn't. I needed time to think, to crush the rage boiling in my blood into something colder, sharper, something that wouldn't let her manipulate me again. I parked 3 streets over and walked the rest of the way. Step after step, the anger settled into something dangerous, control. I wasn't coming back to talk. I wasn't coming back to argue. I was coming back to finish it. When I got to the house, the curtains were pulled tight like she was hiding from the morning light. Coward. The front door was locked, but I still had my keys, stupid mistake on her part, so I let myself in. The second I stepped inside, she came storming out of the kitchen. "You think you can just walk back in here like nothing happened?" she snapped. There was a plate of half-eaten toast in her hand, like she'd been too lazy to even pretend she was devastated. Her hair was twisted up messily, face bare of makeup, not because she was broken, but because she didn't think I was worth the effort anymore. I dropped the envelope onto the coffee table between us. Photos spilled out across the wood in a brutal fan of evidence. She froze. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, she was speechless. Her mouth opened slightly, no words coming out, only a tiny, stunned breath. I waited. Waited for the lie. Waited for the scramble. waited for the performance she was surely rehearsing in her head. She stepped forward slowly, hands trembling just slightly now, eyes darting between the photos like maybe if she moved fast enough she could snatch them back and erase it all. "I can explain," she finally said, voice low and shaky. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Oh, please. By all means. I'm dying to hear the fairy tale version." She flinched at the sound of my voice. "Good. She should be afraid." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her hands clutching the hem of my shirt. She still wore my shirt like a sick trophy. "It was just. I was lonely. You were never home. You stopped caring." The excuses spilled out like oil from a broken pipe. Ugly, slippery, impossible to clean. "I know about the second apartment," I said, cutting her off sharply. That stunned her into silence again. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her face. For a moment, just a moment, I saw real fear flash through her. "You really think you're good at lying, don't you?" I said, stepping closer until we were a breath apart. "You think you're smarter than everyone else? That you can screw whoever you want and still keep me standing here like a good little husband holding the pieces of your mess?" She shook her head rapidly, eyes shining with crocodile tears. "No, it wasn't like that. I swear. I was going to end it. I was in—" "Which one?" I interrupted coldly. She blinked, thrown off. "Which one were you ending? The guys? The girls? The whole separate life you built while I was paying for everything?" Her face twisted into something ugly, something primal. Gone was the fake sweetness. Gone was the victim act. "You're such a goddamn martyr," she spat. "Always acting like you're perfect. Maybe if you hadn't been so boring." "Boring?" I repeated, my voice low and dangerous. "You cheated on me because you were bored?" She shrugged, almost defiantly. "Maybe I wanted more. Maybe I deserved more." The words hung in the air like poison. Deserved. Like I was the villain in the story she'd rewritten in her head. I stared at her, at this stranger wearing the face of the woman I once loved, and realized something blindingly clear. I didn't want to fix this. I didn't want an apology. I wanted out. I stepped back, reaching into my jacket and pulling out a folded piece of paper, the divorce papers I'd printed early that morning after leaving Rachel's apartment. Her face went pale when she saw them. "You're not serious," she said, almost laughing. "You're actually going to throw everything away over a few mistakes?" "A few mistakes?" I said softly. "You burned the entire house down and you're mad I'm not handing you the lighter again." She tried to grab the papers from my hand, but I moved faster, tossing them onto the table beside the photos. Her fingers clawed at the edge, shaking. "I'll tell everyone you were abusive," she hissed suddenly, desperate. "I'll tell them you cheated first. You know they'll believe me." There it was. The real her. I smiled, a real, sharp smile that felt foreign on my face. "Go ahead," I said. "Tell whoever you want. I'm done playing nice." For the first time, she realized she had no control left. No more guilt cards. No more manipulation. I picked up my duffel bag without another word. Walked out without another glance. This time, when the door slammed, it was my choice. The cold morning air wrapped around me like armor. I climbed into my car, heart hammering, adrenaline pouring through me like gasoline through a burning engine. I was free. But as I pulled away from the curb, tires crunching over broken glass somewhere I couldn't see, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. She wasn't the kind of woman to let go quietly. And I wasn't about to let her write the ending to my story. Not anymore. I didn't have a plan. I didn't need one. I just kept driving, each mile putting more distance between me and the rotting house we once called a home. But even as the streets blurred past my window, I knew it wasn't over. She wasn't built to lose. She was the kind of person who could be dead wrong and still think the world owed her an apology. It didn't take long. By the time I checked into a cheap hotel on the edge of town, a cracked parking lot, peeling signs, a room that smelled faintly of bleach and lost hopes, my phone was lighting up with notifications. Not just calls from her. Not just texts. It was everyone. Mutual friends. Coworkers. Her family. And the messages were all the same, flooding in fast and ugly. "Why would you hurt her like that? I can't believe you cheated on her after everything she did for you. You're disgusting. She deserves better." I sat on the sagging mattress, the weight of my phone in my hand like a brick, feeling the slow, creeping realization bloom in my chest. She wasn't just lashing out. She was rewriting the entire story. She didn't just want to leave me broken, she wanted to salt the earth behind her so nothing could ever grow again. I scrolled through the messages, stomach twisting tighter with every line. She told them I hit her. She told them I ran around with other women, that I was a drunk, that I neglected her emotionally until she had no choice but to find love elsewhere. Every word a lie, sharp and gleaming. Every message another nail hammered into the coffin she was trying to build around me. For a second, just a second, I almost cracked. Almost picked up the phone to call her. To scream. To demand answers. But I didn't. Because something stronger had taken root inside me now, a colder fire, a deeper rage. She wanted to play dirty? Fine. I wasn't going to roll over. I opened my laptop, pulled up the folder I never thought I'd need, the one with receipts. Screenshots of conversations. Emails where she slipped up. GPS history that didn't match her alibis. Photos I hadn't even wanted to see before. I built my arsenal carefully, methodically, like I was preparing for war because that's what it was now. Then I made one phone call. Not to her. Not to our friends. To a lawyer. A good one. A brutal one. I explained everything, voice low and calm, while my hands trembled slightly from the flood of adrenaline I refused to show. When I was done, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. You did the right thing calling me first, the lawyer said. His voice was measured, cold, professional. You're in a lot of danger right now. She's setting you up for a bad divorce, spousal support, reputation destruction, possibly more if she gets serious. I'm not going to sit here and let her burn me, I said quietly. Good, he said. Because if you want to survive this, you're going to have to hit first. Hard. I ended the call feeling something I hadn't felt in days, control. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stand on. I spent the next 3 hours building my side of the story piece by piece. Not the emotional part. The facts. The dates. The proof. When I was done, I sat back and stared at the wreckage of the life she thought she controlled. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the coward. I was the only one still telling the truth. I finally let myself crash sometime around noon, the hotel room dim and stuffy. Sleep wasn't peaceful, my dreams were a messy scramble of her face, her voice, the acid sting of betrayal, but it was sleep. Until the knock at the door. I sat up fast, heart punching my ribs. 3 hard knocks. I checked the peephole. It wasn't her. It was 2 police officers. The knock came again, sharper this time. I opened the door carefully, leaving the chain on. The 2 officers looked tired, like they didn't want to be there, but that didn't mean they weren't serious. Mr. Carter, the older one asked, glancing down at a small notepad. Yeah, I said cautiously. We need to ask you a few questions, he said. Mind if we come in? I unhooked the chain slowly and stepped back. There was no point in pretending nothing was wrong. They already knew something. They entered the room, standing stiffly by the door like they didn't want to touch anything. One of them, the younger one, kept looking around like he was waiting for something ugly to crawl out of the walls. What's this about? I asked, crossing my arms. The older officer flipped his notepad open. His face was a perfect mask, not friendly, not hostile. Just unreadable. We received a call, he said. Your wife claims you threatened her life last night. That you became physically violent. There it was. The nuke she had been waiting to drop. I almost laughed, but the look on their faces killed the sound in my throat. They were serious. In her version of the story, I wasn't just a heartbroken husband, I was a ticking bomb, a danger that had to be neutralized before I exploded. I could see it already, the restraining orders, the court hearings, the whisper campaigns in every corner of town. If I made one wrong move right now, I'd be playing into her hands. So I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I didn't even swear. I sat down calmly on the edge of the bed and looked them both in the eye. She's lying, I said, steady as steel. I haven't seen her since I walked out of the house last night. And I have proof. Their eyebrows twitched almost in sync. Proof wasn't something they heard often at this stage. Without a word, I grabbed my laptop from the nightstand, opened the folder I had prepared that morning, and slid it across the bed toward them. Photos. Screenshots. Timestamp texts. The GPS log showing me parked miles away from the house all night. I let them go through it, slow and silent, while I sat there feeling the cold knot in my stomach loosen by degrees. After a long minute, the older officer sighed heavily and closed the laptop. She didn't mention any of this, he said, almost like an apology. Of course she didn't, I said. She's trying to cover her tracks. She's lying to protect herself. The younger one scratched at his neck, looking suddenly uncomfortable. We're not charging you with anything, the older one said. At least not today. But you should know she filed for a temporary restraining order this morning. You're not allowed to contact her. You can't go near the house. I nodded slowly. I expected that move. Fine, I said. But you tell her something for me. They both looked up, alert again. Tell her she picked the wrong man to destroy. The older one gave me a long, careful look like he wasn't sure if that was a threat or a promise. It wasn't a threat. It was the truth. They left without further questions. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving me alone in the stale air of the cheap room. For a few minutes, I just sat there, listening to the blood pounding in my ears. She had escalated this faster than I thought possible. But in doing so, she had made a mistake. She had gone public. And now so could I. I spent the next few hours crafting a story, not a lie, not an attack, just the truth, raw and brutal. Every message she sent, every timestamp, every betrayal laid out clean and simple. I posted it anonymously, dropping it into the little cracks of social media where people whispered but never looked too closely. Screenshots. Facts. Cold evidence. No anger. No accusations. Just a mirror held up to the monster she had become. Within an hour, it started. Texts from old friends, not the accusations she wanted, but questions. Doubts. Private messages from her coworkers, some apologizing to me already. Even her own sister, who had never liked me much, sent a single line that said everything. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The truth was spreading faster than her lies. And somewhere in the deep, cracked heart of all this wreckage, a part of me finally smiled. She thought she could control everything. But she forgot one thing. You can't rewrite a story when the receipts are written in fire. By the next morning, the temperature had changed completely. Where yesterday there had been blind support for her, now there was silence. Long, uncomfortable, loaded silence. People didn't know who to believe anymore, and when people don't know, they pull away fast. No more texts calling me a monster. No more calls begging me to explain. Just the thick, satisfying quiet of doubt settling like a storm cloud over her perfect little narrative. I knew it wouldn't stop her. Women like her don't just quit when they lose control, they double down. They take bigger swings. And sure enough, by noon it came. I was sitting in a different diner this time, a better one, coffee growing cold at my elbow while I stared out the window at nothing when the email hit my inbox. Subject line, formal complaint, harassment. She had filed paperwork at my job. Claimed I had stalked her. Claimed I made threats. Claimed I created a hostile environment that made it impossible for her to feel safe. It was strategic. It was brutal. And it was calculated to do exactly one thing, rip apart the only part of my life she hadn't poisoned yet. My boss called within minutes. His voice was tight, professional, but I could hear the worry underneath it. Not because he believed her. Because accusations like this stick even when they're false. We're putting you on administrative leave pending investigation, he said. It's policy. Nothing personal. Of course it wasn't personal. It was survival. I thanked him stiffly, hung up, and sat there staring at the cracked screen of my phone until the edges of the world blurred. She wanted to destroy me completely. Not just break me emotionally. She wanted me unemployable. Untouchable. Alone. It was smart. And it was a mistake. Because she pushed too far. And I wasn't the scared, heartbroken fool who walked out of that house anymore. I made one call. Then two. Then three. I hired a private investigator, a real one, not some greasy scam artist. The kind of guy who knew how to pull records, dig up dirt, find things that people thought were buried too deep to ever surface. It didn't take long. By evening I had it. Hotel receipts. Apartment leases. Credit card charges under fake names. Pictures. Messages from her burner accounts to other men and women arranging meetings while I was still driving myself into the ground trying to save a marriage she had already set on fire. But the crown jewel? The evidence that one of the guys she had been messing around with was her direct supervisor at her job. A relationship that violated their company's ethics policies 6 different ways. She wasn't just lying. She was gambling with her career too. I packaged everything neatly, a digital file so sharp it could cut glass, and sent it directly to her company's HR department. No threats. No message. Just the truth delivered like a bullet to the heart of the machine she thought protected her. Then I sat back and waited. It didn't take long. The first sign came 2 hours later, a furious text from her. How could you? No explanation. No denial. Just pure rage. Then a second one. You're ruining my life. That made me smile for real, the first real smile in what felt like centuries. Because she still didn't get it. I wasn't ruining her life. She had done that all by herself. I just finally handed her the mirror. By the time the sun went down, the rumors were flying. Her office knew. Our mutual friends knew. Her family knew. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't the victim anymore. She was the storm. I leaned back in the cracked leather booth of the diner, sipped my cold coffee, and watched the world shift on its axis. She started this war thinking she was invincible. Untouchable. She thought she could lie, cheat, destroy, and walk away clean. But she forgot one simple rule. When you burn everything to the ground, you're the one left standing in the ashes. I didn't expect to hear from her again after that night. I thought maybe, just maybe, she would finally understand that the war was over, that she'd lost. But people like her don't understand endings unless they write them themselves. She had to try one more time to control the story. It started with a knock on the door. Not a text. Not a call. A real knock, frantic, fast, desperate, breaking the heavy silence of the hotel room like a hammer through glass. I opened it just enough to see her standing there. No makeup. No designer clothes. No clever lies ready on her tongue. Just her, raw and pathetic, with red-rimmed eyes and a twisted mouth trying to form the right words. She looked small, almost unrecognizable. But I didn't move. Didn't invite her in. Didn't say a damn thing. She took it as permission anyway and shoved past me, pacing the cramped space like a caged animal. "I'm sorry," she blurted out. The words hit the air like wet cement, heavy, clumsy, meaningless. "I didn't mean for it to get this bad," she rushed on, voice cracking, hands flailing. "I was angry. I wasn't thinking straight. You have to understand, you made me feel so, eh?" "Stop," I said sharply. She froze mid-step, arms dropping to her sides. "You don't get to do that," I said, voice low and steady. "You don't get to stand here and pretend you're the one bleeding." "But you don't understand," she whispered, tears finally spilling over. "You don't know what it was like, feeling invisible, like nothing I did mattered to you anymore." I cut her off with a cold laugh. It startled her, that sound, empty of pity, sharp as broken glass. "You didn't feel invisible," I said. "You felt entitled. You wanted more than what you had. You wanted excitement. New faces. New toys. And when you broke everything, you still thought you could come back and pick up the pieces like nothing happened." She flinched at every word, but I didn't stop. I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing it for the man who had sat alone in a parking lot watching the woman he loved wrap herself around a stranger without a second thought. "You lied to me," I said. "Every day. Every night. And now that your world is falling apart, you want me to catch you before you hit the ground." She moved toward me, reaching out like she could still change the ending if she just touched me. I stepped back, and the rejection sliced clean through whatever act she had left. "You ruined me," she sobbed. "You don't know what they're saying about me. I lost my job, my friends." "You lost yourself," I said, voice colder than winter. "Long before any of this started." She sank down onto the edge of the bed, crying now ugly, messy sobs she couldn't control. It should have meant something to me. Maybe once it would have. But not anymore. I watched her for a long moment, feeling absolutely nothing. No rage. No sadness. No regret. Just a sharp, brutal clarity. "You don't love me," she gasped between sobs. "You never did." It was almost funny how far she was willing to bend reality just to avoid looking in the mirror. I leaned down slightly, my voice low and final. "I loved you," I said. "Once. Enough to forgive mistakes. Enough to fight for you when you didn't even deserve it. But the woman I loved doesn't exist anymore." She sobbed harder, crumpling in on herself like a dying star. But I didn't move. "You need to leave," I said quietly. She looked up at me, mascara streaking down her cheeks, mouth trembling. "Please," she whispered. "We can fix this. I can be better. I swear, eh? There's nothing left to fix," I said. "You broke it. You burned it. And now you get to live with it." I walked to the door, opened it wide, and stood aside. The wind from the hallway whipped in, cold and merciless, rattling the thin curtains. She sat there a moment longer, hoping maybe I would change my mind. That I would blink. That I would flinch. I didn't. Slowly, like a puppet with its strings cut, she got to her feet and shuffled toward the door. She paused once at the threshold, looking back at me with wide, ruined eyes. And in that final, perfect moment, I gave her the only thing she truly deserved. Silence. She stepped into the hallway. I closed the door behind her without a sound. And just like that, she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in months, maybe years, the silence wasn't a threat. It was peace. Heavy, still, undeniable peace. I stood there for a moment, staring at the door, half expecting her to come knocking again, to scream, to beg, to throw some last grenade at my feet. But nothing happened. Just silence. I let it sink into my bones, deep and cold, pushing out the last of the rot she had left behind. The phone buzzed once on the nightstand. I didn't rush to check it. When I finally did, it was exactly what I expected, another desperate text, dripping with the same poison she tried to use before. "Please. We can start over. Don't do this." A second one, a few minutes later, more vicious. "You're throwing away the best thing you ever had. You'll regret this when you're alone and miserable." I stared at the words for a long moment. And then calmly, without a flicker of hesitation, I blocked her number. Not out of anger. Out of mercy. Mercy for myself, for the man she thought she could destroy and leave hollow. It didn't end there, though. Nothing with her ever ended clean. By the next day, the fallout had already begun. Whispers from old friends. Stories from coworkers. Online posts she had made trying to spin the narrative back in her favor. Wild, desperate lies about how I was unstable, dangerous, toxic. But the truth had already moved faster than her. Screenshots were shared. Stories compared. Receipts laid out like a trail of fire. She couldn't keep up. One by one, her defenders vanished. People who had once cheered her on fell silent, embarrassed they'd ever believed her. Even her own family started pulling away. And then came the call, the one I hadn't expected. A lawyer representing someone I didn't even know personally, reaching out quietly to say she was facing internal charges from her job for ethical violations related to her affair with her boss. If they pressed forward, she could be barred from her entire industry for years. It was worse than a firing. It was exile. And the best part? I didn't even have to lift a finger anymore. She had built her own noose. I just let her tie the last knot. I spent the next week rebuilding quietly. Closed out old accounts. Moved into a better place, clean and new, without any memory of her poison staining the walls. Cut ties with every mutual friend who had wavered even once. New job interviews. New routines. Every day, I peeled off another layer of her influence until there was nothing left but skin and bone, and something that felt terrifying and thrilling at the same time. Freedom. And in the quiet hours, when the world was still and the nights stretched long and empty, I realized something. She thought she had broken me. But what she really did was free me. Free from the lies. Free from the constant second-guessing. Free from a love that had been rotting in the walls long before I saw the cracks. I wasn't ruined. I was rebuilt. Different. Harder. Stronger. The kind of man who doesn't beg at locked doors. The kind of man who doesn't answer cries from the wreckage. The kind of man she could never touch again, no matter how many times she tried. Because real love doesn't come with knives hidden behind smiles. It doesn't come with excuses or accusations or invisible chains. Real love builds. It doesn't burn. And once you've walked through fire, you never kneel for ashes. It's been months now. Enough time for the dust to settle, for the wounds to close into scars. Scars that don't fade, but don't bleed anymore either. I moved on. Not the way people like to pretend they do, smiling through the pain and whispering fake affirmations to themselves in the mirror. No. I really moved on. I rebuilt from the ground up. New job. New city. New people who don't know my past, who don't look at me with that mix of pity and curiosity. No ghost towns of memory when I walk the streets. No knives hidden behind smiles when I shake hands. For the first time in years, my life is mine. No one pulling strings behind my back. No one twisting my reality into a carnival mirror. No one shrinking me down into a version of myself small enough for them to control. I see her name sometimes drifting across the darker corners of the internet, tied to rumors and scandals, a ghost clinging to the wreckage she created. I don't read them. I don't care. Her story ended the second she walked out of that motel room. She just hasn't figured it out yet. She'll keep running, keep trying to reinvent herself, keep setting fires she can't control. Because that's what people like her do. They don't change. They just find new mirrors to break. I learned something brutal from all of this, something no movie or novel or hollow Instagram quote ever teaches you. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is the best thing that ever will. Because betrayal cuts deep, yes. But it also cuts clean. It forces you to face everything you ignored, everything you lied to yourself about in the name of love, loyalty, hope. It burns the rot out of you. It makes you sharper, smarter, harder, and most importantly free. If you're reading this and you're where I was, sitting in a parking lot watching your whole life collapse, trying to convince yourself that you can still fix it, still save it, listen to me carefully. Walk away. Don't wait for an apology that will never come. Don't wait for them to wake up and realize what they lost. Don't cling to the wreckage like it can somehow float. It can't. It was never built to. Save yourself. Get out. Get angry. Get smart. Get better. And when the day comes that they try to crawl back, dripping with fake regret and desperate promises, look them dead in the eye and remember. They chose this. They chose betrayal over love. They chose chaos over loyalty. And the only thing you owe them now is your absence. Because walking away isn't weakness. It's the purest, most savage kind of strength there is. I remember exactly how it started, not with a suspicion, not with a gut feeling, but with a